We come to the meat of the burger. Today we are going to talk about sections 7 and 8, which is, the most important part, the most important parts, I should say, of the National Register nomination. And this is the content. This is the part that really, really matters, and is the part that is also some of the most technical writing that you're going to have to do. So let's talk about it. Now, before you start working on 7 and 8, you want to make sure that you know certain things about what you want to write about. So the first thing that you're going to want to know is what are the boundaries of your actual district. And conveniently enough, that assignment should be done or pretty close to done by the time you get started. The second thing you're going to want before you start is the criteria that you are nominating this district under. So are you only using criterion A or only using criterion C? In our case, those are the only two that are relevant. In other cases, obviously, you would have to see if any of the others are as well. Generally, you don't want to weaken your argument. You don't want to dilute your argument. But you also need a neighborhood to actually rise to the level of significance. So in our case, honestly, this district wouldn't be eligible. It's just not quite important enough. But we're pretending in our case. But, if you decide to just nominate it under criterion A, then you're going to want to really emphasize the historic aspects of how culturally this neighborhood is important. And if you only nominate it under criterion C, obviously you're going to want to go at length on ranch houses and mid-century housing and its features. I would recommend that you do both, just because that way, if your arguments are a little bit weak or a little bit, not quite sufficient in one or the other, you still kind of pass the bar. The next thing that you need is the periods of significance. In our case, it will be one period of significance. Probably there are no outlier dates that are important. But in other districts, it does happen where a district is important for, let's say, the era it was built in, and then also for some person's life or an event later on. So that does happen. You are allowed to have multiple periods of significance. And in some cases, you can have, for instance, a period, right? So like, 1850 to 1876, and then 1910, and then 1948. I don't know. So you can have discontinuous periods of significance. In our case, though, it's not going to be discontinuous, and it's going to be one period alone. Finally, you're going to want to know what integrities the district has or doesn't have, and be ready to write about all 7 of them. Now, in some cases, you're just going to be able to say it has, it retains all of its integrities except, and then you can talk about the ones where it's not great. But you want to have a handle on all 7 integrities. All right. Once you're done with that, you can start on section 7 and 8. So let's start with section 7. Section 7 is the description of the neighborhood. What is in the neighborhood? It's very straightforward. Your section 7 is going to consist of 3 parts: a summary paragraph, which is exactly what it sounds like, the body of the description, and then the inventory. So let's talk about them one by one. So the summary paragraph is both the introduction and the conclusion of section 7. There is no conclusion in National Register nominations. There's just the summary paragraph. Think of it as an executive summary. So everything that's important should be listed in the summary paragraph and then should be discussed at length in the body of the section 7. All the important facts should be in there, and the shortcut here, just so you know, is location, the street network, the uses, the styles, the condition, and the integrities. So if you have all of that stuff in there, you should be pretty much good to go. So it's one paragraph, and it's just all content. Once you have that summary paragraph, you're going to want to write the body of your of your description. And again, you want to start with the location. So where is it compared to downtown? What's the topography like of the area? Then talk about street network. So is it a grid? How wide are the streets? Are there sidewalks? Is there on-street parking? Street trees, buffers, all of that stuff. Then the physical relationship of buildings. So what's the setback like? What are the yards like? Driveways, outbuildings. Then you'll talk about uses. Then styles. You need to have one paragraph per style to discuss the features of that style. And finally, the condition of the buildings and the integrities. And you need to be, really detailed about the integrities. So a few things about all this. Number one, there's a lot here. You have collected almost all of this information already, but there's a lot here. So use subheadings. If you don't use subheadings, it's going to be so easy to forget some of this important stuff. So use subheadings and then fill it in. You don't necessarily need to be super ultra detailed about stuff, but you need to give a general impression of the neighborhood. So for instance, you could say, streets in the neighborhood have, sidewalks on both sides and generally have stop signs, not stoplights, with the exception of whatever, right? Or you could say there's very little traffic on most of the streets in this neighborhood except, right? That's fine. Let's see, what else is there important here? You really just want to give a very detailed idea of what the neighborhood is. Now, I realize one of the difficulties here is that you're going to have to rerun numbers. First of all, you don't have any charts or maps. Well, you have maps, but you don't have any charts to support your points here. So you need to make sure to state it openly in the text. Furthermore, your numbers are going to be different because your boundaries are excluding a bunch of properties. So you're going to have to run stuff again to get the numbers right. But it shouldn't be too hard to do. And again, you should know how to do this at this point. Now, if you have more questions, the NR Bulletin 16A has a lot more detailed instructions on page 33, and I recommend that you take a look at that. But also don't hesitate to ask me. And again, subheadings are your friends here. They will help you make sure that you don't forget any important details. All right. After this is the inventory, and this is the super ultra boring part, and I'm sorry, but it is required in district nominations. The inventory is exactly what it sounds like. You should have information about every single property in the district. It should be listed in alphabetical order by street and then by street number. And you want to include all the information that's important for each property. And I gave you an example here. So the address, whether it's contributing or non-contributing, the build date, outbuilding if there is one, and then the use and style, and if there's anything else interesting about it. So whether, if there's major changes to it, or if there's a really important decorative element, and that's it. So, this is going to be boring because it's just literally restating what you've already stated in the survey, but it has to be done. So the good thing is this is the kind of work you can do while doing something else, and you can do it in little pieces. And just take your time. So that's the inventory. Right. So that's section 7. Is just what is there. That's it. Which brings me to section 8. Section 8 is why is it important? So section 8 also has 3 sections. The summary paragraph, again, same thing, the body of the significance, and then the bibliography. Luckily, the bibliography you can basically copy and paste and not have to change too much from your CRS report. Obviously, in this case, you are really starting from the history of your CRS report. And again, copy it, paste it, and then edit. So the summary paragraph is exactly the same as section 7. Again, it is the alpha and omega of the section. You do not add a conclusion. There is no conclusion in NR nominations. Everything should be included briefly in the summary paragraph. In particular, you want to make sure to discuss the period of significance and the criteria. So you need to make sure to say, it is significant under criterion whatever because, and discuss the period of significance. Right, the Section 8 body is, just like Section 7. You are going to want to explain what the narrative, what the importance of this district is. But in your CRS report, you really focus just on the district. Here, you really want to kind of start and end every single paragraph, or at least in every single paragraph, have something that says, this is significant because, right? So you need to overtly state, this is important because whatever. So is it significant because it's typical? Great, explain why. Is it significant because it's unique? Great, explain why. This also means that you may need to add, depending on how detailed your CRS history is, you may need to add more national references about, I don't know, what was post-war housing like, or what is ranch, what are the features of ranch houses usually, stuff like that. So you may need to add references to strengthen your argument. This is significant because. So I kind of want to see that in almost every single paragraph, right? Maybe find some synonyms for significant. Again, there are more details about this in NR Bulletin 16A on page 48. You should take a look, especially if you get stuck. Again, though, I want to re-emphasize that Section 7 and 8, yes, they're the meat of this hamburger of the NR nomination, but you already have the ingredients, right? You already have done the analysis. You already have done the history. What you're doing now is rephrasing it to follow the NR rules. I will say, again, subheadings are your friends kind of throughout this whole process, and make sure to write your summary paragraphs very, very carefully. There should be no extra fat in the summary paragraphs, no flowery language. It should just focus straight into the important bits here. And everything that is in your summary paragraphs should be repeated in more detail in the rest of Section 7 and Section 8. When we meet next week, we will discuss all of this. I will show you examples. I also want to let you know that I have 2 district examples that I have posted to Canvas under the files. They are the Salem, Oregon example and the Washington Avenue example right here in Fredericksburg. So you may want to take a look and see how that works in those particular nominations prior to us meeting on Thursday. All right, have a safe and fun Halloween, everybody, and I will see you next week.